Just think logically for only a second. What if you never end up figuring it out? What if you realize all you're doing is waiting for it? You might not call it waiting, but that is it. That is what you are doing. You're waiting for some later point where the fog clears in your mind and you finally understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, and where exactly the version of you that has it sorted, has everything figured out, finally shows up and takes over and starts living the life that you have been assembling all the parts for. Everything is arranged around that person, that future self. Everything is arranged, and the waiting is set up around that. And as a matter of fact, the waiting itself is the architecture, it is the foundation. You make the choices you make today because you know that they are temporary, and soon some god, some see all be all will come and rescue you. Something, you'll finally wake up one day successful and figured everything out. All your choices are leading somewhere in your mind. All your choices eventually will succeed, because once you figure out the real thing, it will start. And all of this, everything right now, was just the part before the success story. But what if that version doesn't come? What if he or she does not come to save you? I'm not threatening you here. I'm not saying that you're going to die soon. I'm just saying, as a question that maybe you've never let yourself hold or think about in any sense. What if there is no arrival of the Savior? What if there is no future plan? What do you have on you today? What knowledge, what skill do you have to carry yourself out of the trench in this present moment? What if all the clarity you've been structuring your life around just falls? What if it just gives up? What if everything you've been setting up, every expectation you've created for yourself, is not actually a thing that happens to people? What if it's just not logical or rational to believe that one day you will be saved by yourself in the future? There is no clean way, or at least in the way that you're picturing it in your mind, where one day you just know, right? What if you are 40 years old and you still don't know? What if you reach 50 and then the not knowing doesn't become a phase, doesn't stay as a phase, but instead it becomes that is it, the texture of it, the actual material, the whole thing that it is made of becomes your existence. And every single person walking around looking like they've figured it out around you is doing the same thing that you are doing, which is waiting and not saying that you're waiting. What if that's it? What if there is no moment of revelation? You need to stop treating it as if it's a problem with a solution, as if there's an answer at the back of the book and you just haven't got to that page yet. As if the present tense is this holding pattern, is this waiting room, is this place you're passing through, rather than a place you're actively living in right now. And maybe you're avoiding it because living in it fully would mean admitting to the fact that this is all there is. This is the life you are given, and everything you do lives that life. What if you're just not ready to admit that, and that is why you're avoiding? There's a specific way that people end up deferring their own lives, by calling it realistic. They call it patience, or waiting for the right time to arrive, or waiting for a clarity, or a moment of clarity, or a sign, or a signal, or the moment where everything makes sense. Everyone, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people live off of that truth, or at least truth in their mind. It's a lie in reality, because underneath all of that is this quiet assumption that the making sense is definitely coming, that it is owed to them by the universe, that if they continue waiting and preparing and getting ready, the understanding will eventually arrive and reward their waiting. Nobody tells you that the waiting might be the thing that costs you the most. Albert Camus called this the absurd. He said that living in a life which promises you no meaning, at least a universe that promises you no meaning, is the normal, it is the standard. So you must revolt and act absurd in the face of that. You must create your own meaning and your own purpose, regardless of the fact that the universe will not provide you with any meaning. What happens if you actually sit with that silence? What happens if you actually sit with the universe which provides you nothing? And if you allow it to be true that maybe you will never figure it out, it may feel bleak, it may feel terrifying. Maybe it'll drop out from underneath you, and the whole structure was built on the arrival, and you just remove that arrival. Maybe it will disappear. Maybe the fallacy will finally come to fruition, and you'll realize the fact that you are not getting saved by a future version which you yourself have to build right now. But stay inside it for a second longer, even if the structure drops from below you. If there's no later where it all makes sense, then this isn't a waiting room. This is it. This is the actual thing. This is the life that you have been treating as the preamble. This is it. I don't know how many times I can say those 3 words. Yeah, this is it. And people still won't understand that. And that bit is terrible because it's also the first free breath in a while, yet it's also the first free breath in a while, right? It's 2 sides of the same coin. You are finally feeling free from the life that you thought was once coming to rescue you, but now you have just realized there is nothing coming to rescue you. It does mean you can stop waiting. It does mean that you can stop deferring your life to a future self. You can stop running your choices to a version of you that is never actually going to show up, and instead just make the choices now. As the confused, half-formed person that you actually are right now, who was never, ever actually going to be replaced by someone who knew better than their current present self. That is true. You can stop waiting. You can stop waiting for that person to come save you. And the people who think that they have it figured out, or the people who you think have their lives figured out, don't. I think it's worth saying that plainly. They've just made peace or made their appearance seem full. It seems satiated. If you eat something which is full of saturation, such as a potato, you will feel full. But a few hours later, that satiation will disappear. That is pretty much the same thing that a lot of these people do, and that is why they can't be around people for too long. Eventually, their satiation for life will run out, and they will reveal the actual life they're living by. Or it could be the idea that they've made peace, or at least some kind of peace with that life of lack of fulfillment. And to an extent, they've stopped announcing to everyone else that they haven't actually succeeded. They are content within themselves knowing that they are not where they need to be. So instead of telling everyone I'm not where I need to be and I'm working towards my goal, they actually just work on the goal. The figuring out that you're waiting for is pretty much something that you invented yourself, or at least something invented by people watching from the outside and eventually assuming that the calm or the relaxed mindset of knowing that the future will guide them to where they need to be meant that they actually knew something. But it doesn't. Just because you know that the future is coming doesn't mean that it's going to come any different to how it ever would have. Fate remains the same. Fate remains unchanged. Virtue is a constant. Fate is a constant. Everything does happen no matter what you perceive it as. So you must live in the present. There is no reason debating the future when the future will eventually come. There is no reason dwelling on the past because that time is no longer yours. You have forgiven it to time itself. You have forgiven it to the universe. You no longer own that time. So why would you waste your current present time that you do own on something that is not yours? And to put it bleak, to put it pretty bluntly, maybe you will never figure it out. Maybe it's just improvisation. Maybe life remains that way. A lot of people get to the same stage as those who we consider successful by, again, improvising, pretending, and convincing other people that the improvising or the... Is that even an improvisation? No, the improvising was the plan the whole time. However, maybe the not figuring out factor is not the tragedy of the story. Maybe the tragedy of the story was only ever the actual waiting. Because imagine you're reading a book and you see this character who is full of potential and everyone in the book sees this character as a genius. But then they are told that they can't do anything with that talent until a future version of themselves grabs them on the shoulder and tells them, now is the time you must become yourself, my young student. Everyone would read that book and think that character is a fucking idiot. What is he doing wasting all that talent? And I'm not saying that every human being on this planet is talented, but instead that the idea of life is a talent in itself. You made it here to live. So why would you waste it waiting for something that will never come? It's not as if you have to figure out everything to start. You don't need the whole plan to take the first step. When you want to drive somewhere, you get in the car first, and then you turn on the car, and then you turn the wheel, and then you chuck it in reverse or drive and go wherever you need to, and then you take a right turn, and then you take a left turn. You don't do all of the things at the first moment. You instead do everything step by step. So why should you treat life the same? Every day is a passing moment. Why waste it? If you're developing a software, you don't immediately launch every single product in your scope. You don't immediately implement every single feature. Instead, you build it slowly, line by line, code by code. That might be the only part of this worth keeping. That entire segment I just yapped about, that might be the only part that I want you to keep, because everything else, honestly, maybe you won't actually absorb a lot of this. But just understand the fact that you were never ever actually going to figure it out before starting. Nobody ever does in that order. No human in history has figured out their entire life before they started living that entire life. You start your life confused. You start the plan confused. You start the drive or the code or the making dinner or the cooking or like literally anything or the working out confused. And you stay confused. And the starting is the only single factor or way that was ever actually available to you. You do not have access to the end point because you haven't even reached the starting point yet. So understand the fact that the arrival is never coming. You can put the idea of that down and free your mind of that tax or that wasted space. And I don't know if that idea is the sad thing or instead the most freeing thing that I've managed to say to myself and now share to you as a person in quite a while now. Some days it's one side. Some days it's sad that no one is coming to save you. Some days it's so fucking relieving knowing that I am the only one who controls my fate. But you can put it down. That is the one part I'm sure of. I'm certain of the fact that no one is coming to save you. So you can put that idea down and start acting.